Good afternoon. I am Council Member Vivian Moreno, City of San Diego, Council Member for District 8, and I will be co-chairing today's meeting. We're pleased to host this tribal symposium. It's a joint meeting with the Interagency Technical Working Group on Tribal Transportation Issues and tribal leaders. Everybody welcome. Buenas tardes y bienvenidos. Before we begin, I would like to ask our clerk to confirm if we have a quorum. Francesca?
Thank you. Yes, we do have a quorum. And I've been also asked to announce the simultaneous interpretation. English and Spanish is available at this meeting. We'll be hearing remarks from at least one person in Spanish. So interpretation devices are available for your members at your seats. And Giovanna, our interpreter, will briefly now explain how this feature works.
Good afternoon. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the language and the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you're joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Buenas tardes. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, por favor, de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, el globo terráqueo, y seleccione español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, desde un celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione silenciar el audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de la reunión, por favor pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to note that this meeting will be conducted in a hybrid format. And so we will also have a Zoom link for the meeting. Members of the public that include and our Borders Committee members and Tribal Symposium members. If you would like to speak, just please raise your hand, or if you're on Zoom, raise your virtual hand. You'll be called upon and unmuted by staff. You may need to unmute yourself if you're on your phone, and *6 will unmute yourself. If you're calling into the meeting, you may need to press *9 on your phone if you would like to comment on any item. All of the comments, whether emailed or live, will be made part of today's meeting record. We also will take public comments in virtually and in person. If you're here in person, please submit a speaker slip to me here or any staff that can bring it to me. And you'll be called upon when the presentation concludes. If you're virtual, please raise your hand at the conclusion of the presentation for the item. We call on members of the public in person first, and then those virtually. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the members regarding the meeting procedures? No, it's pretty clear. Okay, so thank you. Now, do we have any comments from the public at this time, Clerk?
I do have one non-agenda public commenter in person, Truth, and I have one virtual. Truth, please come to the podium.
Hey, it's Truth. I came through rain just to be here with you guys. I'm curious, if tribes participate in a tribal acknowledgement, do they get their land back? I want to know. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about myself. I've got Native ancestors too, Cherokee specifically. And I know everybody's a Cherokee princess, but seriously, a good bit of my family's from the East Coast. My mother grew up going to Cherokee country, and apparently it's way different than it used to be. They're actually doing pretty good. And on a rare occasion, she would make me fry bread with honey. But I also grew up on tortillas and pizza because I identify as an American. I got a lot of cultures and I love them all. The freedom to enjoy and live however you want is the best thing about this country, that freedom. And so I want to address something I found on the California Native American Legislative Caucus, which I'm not going to have enough time to address. What do you know? But it was a lot of anti-American hate, a lot of socialism promoted. And I would like to see that denounced. It's actually from the Anti-Oppression Network and promoted by the University of San Marcos, which refused to return Native remains. So we need to have unity.
Your time has expired. Our final public commenter on non-agenda, the original draw, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's just good to be mindful of what's going on with our borders here, but also in Israel and Palestine, and how the United States government is encouraging the basically usurping of indigenous land from the people, and that is affecting our homeland because they're in support of eradication of Hamas and the Palestinians, and then we have terrorist threats here. As people are crossing the border from, Hezbollah and Hamas that the FBI has been looking into, but DHS is failing to protect our borders. And, with all of the stuff that's going on, trying to take someone else's land and, eradicate, people, it's not good because that has an effect down the way. And we are funding both sides, which is really sad. But I think as you want to do business with the government, you should be very mindful of the things that they do, and that engaging with them isn't going to make anything better for you.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you to all the members of the public. I would like to acknowledge that the month of November is Native American Heritage Month. We celebrate the legacy that Indigenous history makers have left and celebrate those who continue to shape our society, lead their communities, and impact our culture today. We also want to recognize the harmony that exists between the land, the nature, and its original people who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systematic oppression. We pay our respects to the unceded territory and homeland of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, from 4 cultural groups, the Kumeyaay, the Diegueños, the Luiseños, Cupeños, and Coahuila. Did I pronounce all that right? Coahuila. There we go. Coahuila. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. Now, as members of SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the injustice of the past. We share strong historical and cultural roots that unite us all with our neighbors. And I want to acknowledge that this is our first in-person symposium since the pandemic. We're living in new times, a very different world, but our region remains a place of harmony. Yes, with many, many, many challenges, but also many opportunities. So having our symposium in November is not a coincidence, as we are celebrating the U.S. National Native American Heritage Month. And today we celebrate that by meeting here today. And I'm going to turn it over to Chairwoman Pinto.
Thank you, Council. And thank you, Borders, for hosting us today at this joint meeting, and appreciate everybody for coming down here today. I know it's raining, but I also want to say that it is Native American Heritage Month, so thank you for recognizing that and acknowledging that. And thank you, Truth, for sharing that information about your heritage. I really appreciate that. My name is Erica Pinto, and I'm the chairwoman for the Hamul Indian Village of California. I also serve as the co-chair for the Technical Working Group on Transportation Issues, as well as the Native American Advisory Committee to Caltrans. I'm also the chair with Jackie Hostler-Carmison of the Trinidad Rancheria. And something that we do at that meeting, which I would love to do today, after the blessing, of course, is I want to hear from the tribal nations. I want to go around the room and hear from the tribal nations about what are your priorities in your areas. About 1 minute, take about 1 minute to do that. But before we do that, I would like to invite the tribal chairman from Barona Band of Mission Indians and the Borders Committee advisory member, Raymond Welch, to share a blessing. Raymond, chairman, excuse me.
Thank you. For those you don't know, Barona is 35 minutes from northeast of downtown. We invite you to come out and visit our museum. If you want to learn more about our people, we have a great museum that tells an amazing story. We have a creation story for you to come visit. Well, we welcome you to come visit her. Amayaha. We thank you for today. We thank you for this opportunity to come together and speak about transportation issues that face our communities. We thank you, Father, for this rain, this much life-giving rain that we are receiving. We are very grateful for it. Tetekai Neyip Amayaha Iyayahan HP. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Welch. So this is the part that I was speaking about, group updates. We'll now move on to introductions. For our tribal leaders, we ask that you introduce yourself and share one or two efforts that your tribal government is currently prioritizing or updates that you would like to share with this group. So we'll start with my right, Chairman again. Please share some priorities that are happening in Brona.
Our priorities have been infrastructure. California, long time drought. So we've been focusing on bringing outside water to our reservation. That's been our number one priority. We have a aging infrastructure. That main water line on the southern end of the reservation was installed in 1954. So it has outlived its life expectancy. We're replacing that right now as we speak. So, and also looking for renewable energy. We're focusing on grants and bringing renewable energy to the reservation. That's been our primary focus since I took office in 2021.
Great. Thank you, Chairman. Ray Tehran? No.
Thank you, Your Honor. Viejas right now is concentrating on primarily providing mental and substance abuse health for the community. In April, we opened up our wellness center. And within the wellness center, we have opioid prevention programs. We have crime victim advocate programs. We have some programs dealing with assistance for substance abuse. And we're also going to be one of the first pilot programs for the mobile crisis response team, which will be housed in the Viejas area. And it will provide immediate assistance to anybody in crisis before the police get there. They'll be there to help the tribal member. So that's our primary emphasis. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ray. Much needed in our community. The next tribal rep, Michael Michael Connolly.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Well, I'm not here on behalf of any specific tribe, and I'm the liaison for Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association to SANDAG. And I work across a variety of programs, primarily those that involve the transboundary issues. So we cover a lot of things. Emergency response is a really critical issue for our communities. Transportation is another issue that crosses the borders, and that we have opportunities to work together on. Economic development is an issue with many of our tribes, and the going beyond gaming. And there's some tribes that just it's not feasible to have gaming, and others it's only marginal. So the ability to really exercise economic sovereignty within the tribal communities is really a critical issue. I also do a lot of work in natural resources, environmental protection, and we're working on a regional level with the Regional Water Quality Control Board on establishing tribal beneficial use standards on all waters of the region, and also looking at ways to incorporate within the process of CEQA the ability to take tribal environmental knowledge and have that become a component that actually can help to add to the breadth and the strength and the sustainability of mitigations to developments that occur. So those are, I think, the highlights.
Any other tribal leader that I missed? Teresa Gregor, is there anything?
Like Mike Connolly, I'm also a consultant for SCTCA. I am from the Ipai Nation of Santa Isabel, and I can't speak for them, but I could share a little bit of work that that's happening up near Vulcan Mountain. As Mike said, economic development for non-gaming tribes is really critical, and especially for those that are located in more mountainous and rural parts of the county. So Santa Isabel does have a dispensary, but they're in the process of building a new mini mart and gas station. So that's something that's really exciting out there to provide more food accessibility, but also for fuel for folks that live in the backcountry. And Santa Isabel, and I don't know if Chairman Osuna is on, is also working on environmental issues pertaining to the health of Vulcan Mountain, especially in regards to the tree mortality that we experienced during the drought. And they have a large grant that they received from CAL FIRE and will be getting mitigation projects, and I believe culminating their efforts in some sort of a regional symposium around forest health, wildfire prevention, and similar natural resource management as Mike shared. Thank you.
Is there anybody participating virtually, any tribal leader that would like to share priorities in your area? Okay. Hearing none, then I'll go ahead and briefly touch upon what Jamul Indian Village, which is located 20 minutes from downtown San Diego. We are the closest tribe to downtown San Diego. I consider myself a city Indian, and I actually do live in Cortez Hill, but one of our main priorities is housing. Right now, we have only 6 acres. We do have an economic development called Jamul Casino that we own and operate since 2016. With the revenue of Jamul Casino, we've been able to purchase 161 acres of downtown Jamul land for housing, diversification, commercial development, because I'm not sure how long gaming is going to be around for the tribal nations. We have exclusivity at the moment. Who knows what's going to happen with regard to gambling becoming legal in the state of California or across the nation. Acquiring land, as I mentioned, to build those homes. Also a healthcare facility. Healthcare continues to be my #1 priority for our people. As Ray mentioned, you know, our communities suffer from substance abuse, mental health issues, our access to care. Public safety is another one. MMIP, everybody knows, missing and murdered Indigenous persons, is a epidemic that we also face. And so for me, we have to create our own safety network, and we're creating it at Jamul called the TIN, the Tribal Information Network, and we're trying to allow other tribes to join us because we may be competitive with each other in our businesses, competitive, you know, and I say that Jamul Casino is the best in the region, but what I don't want to happen is a bad person, you know, someone who's committing fraud or human trafficking to come to Jamul Casino and then go to another casino. So we're trying to work together with other tribes to keep the bad people out, keep our patrons safe, keep our tribal members safe, keep the communities safe. So that's another thing that we're really championing right now, and we're developing our own police force because we know that there's only one federal official in the state of California, just one, that services over 109 tribes, and that's uncalled for. So we need to address that as well. And at the Department of Interior Secretary's Tribal Advisory Committee that I serve on, that's something that I'm also championing to get more resources to California. Also, what's going on right now was the National Congress of American Indians. It's taking place in my favorite town, New Orleans. And I flew in last night from New Orleans from the National Congress, and there's a lot of really good, healthy discussion going on about all these topics that we're talking about today. But I think that's all in a nutshell that I have, and I'll turn the mic back over to Council Moreno. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We are going to be moving to item #2, which is welcoming remarks. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our first speaker. The first speaker that I'd like to introduce is Deputy Evelyn Sanchez, so Diputada Evelyn Sanchez. Deputy Sanchez is the president of the Baja California State Legislature's Commission of Indigenous and Social Welfare Commission. Diputada Sanchez was elected to the Congress of the state of Baja California in 2021 to represent District 11 in the Tijuana region. I want to commend Diputada Sanchez because she's been a champion for the indigenous communities. Earlier this year, Representative Sanchez gave details about an initiative to protect the craft made by Native people peoples of Baja California and avoid plagiarism, which is an extremely important issue that doesn't get much attention, but one that needs to be addressed. Diputada Sanchez, thank you for joining us today. For the folks who don't speak Spanish, this would be a good time to put on your headset so you understand what Diputada Sanchez is saying. Diputada Sanchez, por favor.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días a todas y a todos. Qué gusto saludarles. Hoy amanecimos con un día lluvioso, un placer. Aquí desde Tijuana, Baja California, comentarles que yo soy originaria de la comunidad mixteca de Oaxaca, de la diversidad cultural, y me tocó estar en Baja California como migrante, como indígena, en el Congreso de Baja California por primera vez en el espacio tan importante para legislar y cambiar las leyes en el estado de Baja California. Hay una mujer indígena y ahora estamos trabajando con nuestras comunidades, nuestras tribus yumanas, que son pueblos hermanos, son binacionales, las comunidades Cucapá, Cumiay, Quiligua y Cochimí. Estamos trabajando para sacar el plan de justicia de los pueblos yumanos para que el pueblo, el gobierno de México les pueda atender en materia de territorio, agua y por supuesto proteger sus patrimonios como sus centros sagrados que tienen aquí en nuestro estado de Baja California. Comentarles que estamos trabajando bajo varias reformas que benefician en cuanto a sus derechos y que les garanticen la participación. En este 2024, por primera vez, ya está legislado, ya no es un tema de una cuota, ya ahora todos nuestros hermanos y nuestras hermanas de las comunidades indígenas en Baja California podrán tener participación en los puestos de elección popular como diputados locales, diputados federales, senadores o presidentes municipales, regidores o síndicos. Ellos ahora podrán tener esta oportunidad de tomar decisiones para mejorar las condiciones de nuestras comunidades indígenas en Baja California. Tijuana es la ventana del otro mundo, la ventana de Estados Unidos para ingresar a México, donde tenemos una diversidad, un mosaico cultural de todo México y les damos la bienvenida a todas y a todos, pero tenemos que trabajar bajo una cultura y con mucho respeto a todos nuestros centros sagrados que corresponden a nuestros pueblos nativos de Baja California. Ellos se manejan por tribus, por clanes y que también están coadyuvando con nuestros hermanos que están del lado de San Diego. Sin embargo, lo que buscamos es que por primera vez haya este encuentro de hermandad de los pueblos yumanos de México y Estados Unidos, porque ellos son la grandeza que tenemos y tenemos que seguir trabajando. Bueno, hasta ahí les informo, yo les voy a estar mandando todo lo que tengo en materia legal y reformas que hemos trabajado para todas nuestras comunidades en Baja California. Y sobre todo hacerles justicia, seguir visibilizando que aquí en Baja California tenemos a los pueblos yumanos que son la comunidad Cucapá, Quiligua, Cumiay, Paypay y Cochimis. Son los pueblos nativos de Baja California y les tenemos que hacer justicia y proteger todo lo que tenga que ver y garantizarles sus derechos en todos los sentidos. Y les mando un fuerte abrazo desde Tijuana.
Thank you very much, Deputy Sanchez. Muchas gracias. We're also joined virtually by Linda Sachs from the California Native American Legislative Caucus. Linda will share some updates with us virtually. Ms. Sachs, are you on?
I just promoted her to panelist, Chairwoman. Just 1 second. And Ms. Sachs, you are self-muted. Please go ahead.
Hi, Sio Nagad, good afternoon. It's a wonderful day, week, month, time to be Indigenous here in this point in history with what's going on with strong leaders. I see that you have at the dais there, all making strong moves and furthering the agenda of the indigenous population and Native American people. So it's a great time to be a part of this community. First of all, thank you to the board of directors. Thank you to the members and to the public for your participation today, and inviting and welcoming California's Legislative Native American Caucus Chairman, Assemblymember James Ramos, to be here with you today. But unfortunately, as you see, Assemblymember Ramos is unable to attend, but sends his regrets and hopes to be able to participate in the future. So I'm happy to be here on his behalf and make mention of the numerous achievements that the Native American Caucus has achieved in this last year under the leadership of Assemblymember Ramos. As mentioned earlier, understandably, this is Native American Heritage Month, and as the only Native American currently in the legislature, Assemblymember Ramos is working steadfast, pedal to the metal on numerous policy legislation for tribes from border to border. This is my first year at the Capitol. Prior to the end of session, I would hear how things might slow down, but that's certainly not the case for Ramos and Team Ramos. Just last week, the first ever Native American monument was revealed in an unveiling and dedication ceremony in Capitol Park. The Capitol lawn and the local area tribes were whose ancestral land on which the Capitol was built and was home to the Miwok and Nisenan people of the Sacramento region. That lawn hosted over 500 recorded visitors last Tuesday. The monument is representative of Native American contribution from all across California to the state, just the sustainability, everything that California has been built upon, giving that acknowledgement to the first peoples of California. The monument was created in the likeness of a well-respected Miwok tribal leader. So if you had a chance to come out and see this monument, it is the 10th monument to be erected in the California State Capitol lawn, just east of the building. It is a beautiful sight. It was an emotional sight for everybody to be there and be a part of that. And that event rivaled any other with such a large attendance in the Capitol Park. And that's just the latest of the events. This past legislative season saw other important legislation come to pass. In fact, Ramos authored 15 bills this past session. 14 of those are signed into law by Governor Newsom. Some of this legislation impacts Indian country directly and in valuable ways. I heard I mention earlier about the repatriation. AB 226 is the UC Graves Graves Protection Act, and AB 389 CSU's Native American Repatriation Act. After the UC audit in 2020, which was called into order by Assemblymember Ramos, the results led to a CSU audit that was completed and delivered in June of this year. The results, unfortunately, were not surprising. After NAGPRA's original enactment in 1990, less than 5% of Native American remains and cultural items had been returned to tribes, with a known unreturned amount of over 700,000 collections in their possession. Even with the enactment of CalNAGPRA in 2003, there was still no traction to be seen. Now the UC and CSU systems will have to provide reports to the legislature every year until this completion. One of those offenders was some of the largest collections as reported with Sacramento State. And after the August hearing, their president made a pledge to have the entirety of their collections returned within the next 5 years. That was the most aggressive response, and that was immediately after the hearing in August of this year. Unfortunately, still today, our people's remains are continually being found, but not always by the way of ancestral burial grounds, but by the way of an epidemic that ranks California in the top 5 of unsolved cases for missing and murdered Indigenous people, women, and girls, also known as MMIP. This past spring and May of this year, the Capitol West Up saw yet again a crowd surpassing the number of 700 attendees. Many in the room with you there today, the tribal leaders participated in that amazing event. It was the first ever candlelight vigil held on the Capitol lawn, and the lighting of the Capitol Dome in red and acknowledgments of the MMIP cases still unresolved today. That month, the legislature passed ACR 25, for MMIP Awareness Month for May. Lastly, in January of this year was the enactment of AB 1314, known as the Feather Alert. Ramos's partnership with area tribes, law enforcement, and his colleagues have provided implementation roundtables of this Feather Alert. In June, the Feather Alert was activated for the first time and with a successful response. The individual was found and returned home safely. Team Ramos has traveled the state providing these implementation roundtables, presenting facts such as some that I've heard mentioned this afternoon already, that California is home to the largest Native American population in the United States with over 700,000 enrolled citizens. California is home to the largest number of federally recognized tribes in the nation and home to the largest number of transplanted Native Americans from other parts of the country, either by way of school, career, or various federal relocation programs that displace Native Americans from their home reservations from across the United States to urban California areas. It is a desire of Assembly Member Ramos to host one of these critical information roundtables in the San Diego area. San Diego is unique in many ways, not only because it's home to the most federally recognized tribes in any other location in California, but in the nation. And even more representative of federally recognized tribes from across the United States. You're rich in indigenous culture, language, some of our most valuable resources. We must continue to do everything we can to save and preserve California's most valuable resource, and that is its tribal people, the keepers and stewards of this land, the sovereign right to be distinct in culture and language and practice and in governance. Assembly Ramos hopes to host a roundtable again in partnership with you sometime in the near future. I gladly make myself available to discuss this further and engage in that conversation. And in the meantime, have a great Native American History Month, celebrating the resiliency and culture of California's First People. Thank you.
Ms. Sachs, we thank you so much for your updates and for joining us this morning. Happy Native American Month to you. Enjoy the rest of your day. We appreciate your time. I see that Assemblymember Ramos is all over the place, and we thank him so much for his leadership for all American Indians. Thank you. We're also joined virtually by the Deputy Tribal Affairs Secretary and Special Counsel Loretta Miranda from Office of Governor Gavin Newsom to share some updates. Ms. Miranda, I see you on the screen. I'll turn it over to you. Good morning or good afternoon. I keep feeling like we're in the morning. It's in the afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I actually just changed my talking points because I had good morning on here because I feel like we're in the morning too. But good afternoon, everyone. My name is Loretta Miranda, and I currently serve as Deputy Tribal Affairs Secretary and Special Counsel for the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs. I am a descendant of the Morongo Band of Mission Indians, and I also have ties to the San Diego region. My great-grandfather is Jack Litton. He comes from the Warner Springs area, and my great-grandmother, Susie Paipa, comes from the Captain Grande area. So thank you to the SANDAG Borders Committee for inviting me here today to quickly provide a few updates. I wish I could be there in person with you all, but I am currently joining you all virtually from Sacramento. Since this is my first SANDAG meeting, I want to take a minute to briefly explain the role of the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs, which was originally established as the Governor's Office of the Tribal Advisor by Executive Order B-1011 and codified through AB 880. It's a part of the Governor Gavin Newsom's administration, and under the direction of the Tribal Affairs Secretary, the office reports directly to Governor Newsom and is responsible for overseeing and implementing effective government-to-government consultation between the governor's administration and California tribes on policies that affect California tribal communities. The office's charge is to serve as the direct link between tribes in California and the governor, to facilitate communication and consultations between tribes and state agencies, and to review state legislation and regulations affecting tribes and provide recommendation. Our office leads and convenes the California Truth and Healing Council. We also lead and convene the California Indian Heritage Center Task Force. And our office established and administers the Tribal Nation Grant Fund as authorized under AB 880. And further, we convene administration and tribal leadership to discuss high-level policy priorities and initiatives at an annual California Tribal Nations Conference. So that's essentially our office in a nutshell. Today, I wanted to provide some updates on the California Truth and Healing Council, which, as a reminder, is a California Native American-led initiative that aims to clarify the historical record of the relationship between the state of California and California Native Americans by bearing witness to, recording, examining existing documentation of, and receiving California Native narratives in the spirit of truth and healing. The council will issue a report in 2025 that, one, actually brings the Native experience and narrative into the historical record, and two, makes remedial, reparative, and restorative recommendations aimed at addressing the harms. The council continues to host both in-person and virtual events within the community. And as a reminder, these convenings are open to the public, but we prioritize California Indian participation in this space. The next in-person meeting will actually be in the San Diego region. If your tribe is located in the San Diego region, we urge you to provide testimony at this meeting. Please reach out to me if you would like to be added to the agenda, and I will be sending more emails asking for that in the meantime. So the quarterly meeting will take place on, day one of the quarterly meeting will be on Friday, December 15th at the Hamul Casino Prime Cut Steakhouse from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Day two of the quarterly meeting will be on Saturday, December 16th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Manzanita Ramada in Boulevard, California. So in addition to the quarterly meeting, all of the subcommittees of the Truth and Healing Council will be convening for an in-person subcommittee meeting on Thursday, December 14th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the Museum of Us in San Diego. This meeting is open to all subcommittee members and those that may be interested in joining a subcommittee. And as a reminder, our office is currently holding ongoing consultation with tribes about the Truth and Healing Council. And if your tribe would like to meet, please let me know and we can arrange that. And that's all for the updates on the Truth and Healing Council. Next, I'd like to turn to the Tribal Nation Grant Fund. The panel will be meeting in December. And as a reminder, the Tribal Nation Grant Fund Emergency Response Grant is available to eligible tribes to respond to and provide relief for the immediate impacts of unexpected situations that threaten the health and safety of tribal communities that require emergency action. Tribes may apply for up to $100,000 per emergency and must provide an authorizing resolution and a tribal emergency resolution or proclamation. Funding is ongoing and is typically considered on a month-to-month basis. And finally, as a reminder, we have transitioned from a monthly drought consultation meeting to a quarterly drought consultation meeting. Our next meeting will take place in January, and we're also happy to meet with your tribe on a government-to-government basis to address your specific needs and concerns. So thank you for allowing me to present today and taking the time to listen, and please reach out if you have any questions or concerns, and I will forward all of this information over to the organizers and my contact information as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our speakers for those welcoming remarks. We are now going to move over to item number 3. And just a reminder, we have a total of 5 more items that we want to take up on this agenda. Item number 3, though, is the SANDAG Tribal Program update. I believe we have SANDAG staff here that is presenting. And if they could just... Oh, it's just a consent item. Oh, I apologize. I apologize for that. But it's an informational item, so no action is needed, right? Okay, so we're moving right on, you guys. Look at that. Oh, we do public comment. Okay, wonderful. So if our clerk can take it over for public comment.
I will. Thank you, Chair. I do have public commenters on this item. One in person, Truth. Please come to the podium, and I have 3 virtual that will follow.
You know, what's interesting about the SCTCA having an advisory role in the SANDAG board is that it's usually Congress who facilitates government-to-government interactions. It's almost like SANDAG is usurping the checks and balances of our government, as usual. Hopefully there's going to be more public outreach for the tribes for the 2025 regional plan versus how they did it here, where they asked us to put up sticky notes and then they didn't even include our ideas in the presentations. I saw in the transportation strategy plan $40 million for 3 miles of one bike lane at SR 76. That's over $13 million a mile, while emergency evacuations still need attention. I did like the rejections of trail plans that cross onto tribal lands. That should have been an obvious don't do. And there's $500,000 for a tribal digital village with the SCTCA. But has anyone considered the negative health impacts of the radiation emitting Wi-Fi infrastructure? Electricity is also the most expensive form of energy, 3 times as much in San Diego as anywhere else on planet Earth. So once again, SANDAG is failing at equity. Also found a typo on page 83. The word rural is misspelled. You could fix that.
Thank you. Your time expired. Our next commenter, Consuelo, will be followed by the final 2, Blair Beekman and the original draw. Consuelo, please go ahead. You're self-muted. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Okay. So I just, wow. We settled on just a month for the first people. The irony, this meeting really makes my blood boil. I will keep it cool to honor my grandmother, who was from Window Rock. That is Navajo Nation, for those of you who don't know. When she was young, she was encouraged to deny that she was Navajo due to her pale skin. And she was able to get away with it. Her siblings were also discouraged from saying that they were born on the res. It's appalling how we have not learned from history to never trust government. And here, these tribal people, these supposed leaders, are mixing with the same government who did what they did to our First Nations people. It's just, it's disgusting. It's amazing. Gosh, I know there's a term for the Black people, Uncle Toms. I'm gonna start calling my people who do this Uncle Tomahawks. That's what you guys are, Uncle freaking Tomahawks. How dare you mix with this nasty government?
Your time expired. Our next public commenter, Blair Beekman, will be followed by the final commenter, the original draw. Blair, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Blair Beekman. It seems like a really interesting meeting today. Thank you for it. A lot of really interesting, good agenda items. Thank you. For myself, with this item, working on tribal concern matters, you worked really hard to bring the future of broadband into tribal reservation areas. I do a lot of work with tech accountability. It serves many purposes. And I'm really interested in how tech accountability guidelines and practices can be of interest to the elders and leaders of tribal nations and what they would think of its practices. I think it can really help in the process of dialogue and creating, good practices and good standards of how to address issues and address, different regions, explain practices to each other. I'm really interested in his work and how it can connect exactly with tribal nations. It's accountability. Thank you.
Our final commenter, the original draw, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's sad because I've been kept from knowing a bunch of my family because of being Indian. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, just what you guys want to do. I don't understand why you want to engage with the entity that has usurped everything that you have. And, you're still trying to, make up for it. I don't understand why we would do that. And ask them for help when, all they want to do is come in and take more control. So you give them an inch and they'll take a mile. I mean, and I don't know if you understand that in our communities, they're giving us sewer water. So, I mean, when you're talking about bringing water in from somewhere else, I mean, are you willing to give your people sewer water on where you're at? And also like the electric infrastructure or the broadband, all of those things are toxic to the environment. And I thought that was something that, we hold up in high esteem and that, you want to look at as like preserving and not destroying. So you really need to look at who you're dealing with right now because they're lying to you about a lot of stuff.
And that concludes the public comments on this item.
We will now, thank you to all the members of the public. We are now going to turn it over to member comments. Are there any members who would like to address this body? Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I'm Vice Mayor Laura Koval from the city of Santee, but in this committee, I serve as the East County representative. I want to share a little bit about myself. I have a strong connection to the Verona Band of Indians because I went to Tierra del Sol Middle School my first boyfriend and best friend lived on the reservation in the 70s, which was the wild, wild west back in the 70s, but very fun. And I went to El Capitan High School. My youngest daughter is a chef at Verona, and she and her fiance live in Ramona. In the Borders Committee, I speak up quite often about transportation on the 67. And, you know, we've been, as taxpayers, paying into SANDAG for a long time to fix that evacuation route on the 20th anniversary of the Cedar Fire this year. I really want to let you all know that that is still very important to me as someone who lives in East County. Although I'd love to see the 52 freeway fixed, the 67 is a priority for anybody that lives in East County, especially where it bottlenecks into Lakeside. So I just wanted to share with everybody that that's a priority for me and will continue to be. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other members of this committee wishing to speak? Okay, so we're going to move on to item number 4. Item number 4 is the sovereignty and tribal nations in the region. We're joined today by Mr. Michael Connolly, member of the Campbell Band of Mission Indians in Southern California, Tribal Chairmen's Association representative, who's going to share a presentation on sovereignty and tribal nations in the San Diego region. I'd like to invite Mr. Connolly to give us his presentation.
Well, good afternoon, board members, government leaders, staff, and members of the public. My name is Michael Connolly Misquish. I'm a former councilman for the Campo Kumeyaay Nation. I'm an engineer and economist by education. I write on economics, history, and Kumeyaay culture. I work with Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association as a policy consultant and liaison to SANDAG. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to tribal sovereignty and then show a short video on the topic. The Constitution of the United States recognizes 4 types of governments: federal, state, foreign, and American Indian. The Constitution lays out the foundation for the structure of government and the relationships between the different types. For Indian nations, no structure is written. This is because there was recognition that even before the creation of the United States, the indigenous peoples of this continent already had in place independent sovereign governments. One of the main concerns of the United States in those early years was the control of Indian nations in their interactions with other nations, particularly European. Other issues arose over time, and the sovereign authority of Indian nations has endured many challenges. Despite these challenges, over the last 234 years, the basic premise of sovereign identity has continued to be central to the U.S.-Indian nation relationship. Where you sit today, where you had dinner last night, the roadway you drove to work, and the beach you relaxed on last summer were all lands governed by sovereign Indian nations that manage the people and resources of the region in service to their communities. Those sovereign authorities, also known as tribal governments, have never left this area and continue to govern and serve their people. The later arriving federal government acknowledged their existence, but ultimately confined their governance to specific limited lands. The entry of California into statehood was a particularly dark chapter of U.S. history for Indian people. After Indian nations negotiated treaties in good faith with federal representatives to resolve new state jurisdiction and Indian land boundaries, the California delegation to Congress successfully lobbied against ratification of those treaties and entered into an overt period of murder and enslavement of indigenous people that was only curtailed by the passage of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution in 1868. Even after that, California's own versions of Jim Crow laws continued well into the 20th century. In San Diego, local Indian people were essential to the building of San Diego. In the early days of statehood, San Diego Indians dominated the labor force at the docks. They crewed the whaling ships and the rendering facilities. They were an essential part of the ranching labor throughout the county, and Indian women were very visible in the domestic trades. Indian villages existed throughout the area of the current San Diego city boundaries. Florida Street, 11th Street, Los Choyas, South Bay, and other locations were among those in the early American period. Despite the critical role of native labor in building San Diego, when reservations were finally created in 1875, they were sited far from coastal lands into the most marginal lands of the interior. Over 90% of the local native populations were destroyed by 1900, and the coastal presence of the local tribes was only a tenuous thread. Despite these many dark periods, Native communities continued to hold the United States to its duty and obligation to live up to the relationship promised in the Constitution. Native people have fought in the courts, in Congress, and the legislature to maintain their sovereignty. Generations of hard work and perseverance have brought true meaning to our political structure and self-governance. The Supreme Court in the early 1800s termed this relationship domestic dependent sovereignty, and it is an important part of our existence and identity. And I'll now show the video. Thank you. Or they will show the video. Someone will.
Hello, I'm Sequan Chairman Cody Martinez, and on behalf of Sequan's Tribal Council, I would like to share some important and interesting insights with you regarding Native American sovereignty. It's the responsibility of all tribes to continue to educate everyone on sovereignty, and not just the public at large, but also our tribal youth, so it's ingrained in their core understanding of who they are and what they will be protecting when it's their time to lead. Tribal governments provide essential government services such as water, healthcare, housing, educational, and many other opportunities for our people that were non-existent up until our ability to fund these programs ourselves.
Sovereignty is the inherent power of a nation to govern itself, and Indian tribes existed as sovereign governments in a free and independent existence for thousands of years before Europeans stepped foot on this continent. Power of a nation to govern itself, and Indian tribes existed as sovereign governments in a free and independent existence for thousands of years before Europeans stepped foot on this continent.
If it's okay with the body, we will take public comment while we figure out the technical issues. And we will, hopefully they'll have the video ready for us. And everybody's okay with that? Okay, wonderful. So now, clerk, we are going to turn to public comment on this item.
Thank you. I have one in-person public commenter for item 4, Truth. If you could please come to the podium, you'll be followed by the 3 virtual public commenters.
Thanks for some of that history. Fun fact, the Iroquois Confederacy inspired the American founders. But the domestic dependent sovereignty, there's some irony in that. Sovereign nations with lands in trust to the U.S. government or an organization or corporation that doesn't even recognize the rights of its own citizens. So it'd be crazy to expect they'd recognize or respect the rights of another nation's people. That's real talk. There's so many treaties that have been unfulfilled for so long, and I don't see that changing. But an important note about treaties is all federal statutes and treaties must be within the parameters of the Constitution. For example, a treaty cannot override the First Amendment. In fact, anything that goes against the Constitution is supposed to be deemed null and void. From Marbury versus Madison in 1803, quote, all laws which are repugnant to the Constitution are null and void, end quote. And from Miranda versus Arizona, quote, where rights secured by the Constitution are involved, there can be no rule making or legislation which would abrogate them, end quote. So domestic dependent sovereignty, we really need to work on that. We need domestic independent sovereignty. That's what real sovereignty is. It's independence.
Your time expired. Our next commenter, Consuelo, will be followed by the original draw, and then our final commenter, Kevin Osuna. Consuelo, please go ahead.
Consuelo. Mr. Connolly, you've been educated by the colonizers. Fantastic. Not. We learn from history that we haven't learned from history. If the county claims they honor the First Nations people, then give them back their land. All of it. FYI, we're not Indians. The label that the indigenous people were given were from the people who saw the ones in India. Honestly, we don't even have the goal, what's the word? We can't even be honored with being called what we are. I truly wasn't prepared for this meeting, but you know what? Whatever. Sovereignty is just a word, especially when our indigenous people have adopted everything, including how this government operates. Yeah, we learn from history that we haven't learned from history. Wake up.
Your time expired. Our final public commenter on this item will be the original draw. I was just told that Kevin Osuna is actually a member of one of the tribal governments, and he will be speaking as a member comment after once the chairwoman calls on him. The original draw, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's sad because we think that we can come to people and then, ask them for the freedom to do whatever, but they don't have, the authority over any of us to grant us things that they aren't able to grant. Our rights come from our creator. They don't come from man, but yet we come to man and we plead and beg to him to give us rights that they don't even grant us. And so they will always usurp them. And that's what's so sad, is that you are engaging with an entity that will never fully give you, or anybody for that matter, the true freedoms that we all deserve. Because the idea is to enslave everybody. And now you're engaging with an entity who is set out to do that again, but with all of humanity. And so it's just sad that we can sit here and be like, oh, hey, can I have permission for this? When we shouldn't be coming to any kind of human being to ask for that kind of stuff, because it's all about control and who you have to come to in order to get what you need.
Your time expired, and that concludes the public comments on this item.
Thank you. So this is the opportunity for Borders Committee members or Tribal Symposium attendees to make your comments, and we will start online with Mr. Osuna. The floor is yours, sir.
Halka, everybody, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Kevin Osuna, Chairman of the Ipai Nation of Santa Isabel. I'd like to start by thanking you for having us. We finally have a voice. Our voice has been silenced for a long time, and I'd like to thank Erica, Miss Chairwoman, for facilitating this border committee, and to have our voices heard within these government entities is a necessary thing. And one of our main issues in Santa Isabel is the safety on our roads. We live in a rural community with urban expansion. We've had issues with high traffic rates and near misses and collisions on Highway 79. And that's one of our issues we're dealing with in Santa Isabel. And thank you for having us.
Thank you very much for being here with us. Any other member wishing to be acknowledged on this item? So seeing and hearing none, I want to thank Mr. Connolly for your presentation. And I also want to commend the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association for pushing your mission of health, welfare, safety, education, cultural, economic, and employment needs of its tribal members and descendants in the San Diego County urban areas. The SCTCA has been supporting tribal members since 1972 via numerous programs, including food distribution, childcare services, career development services, grant, and more. And please know that your efforts do not go unnoticed. And thank you for the presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Connolly, I was stunned by some of the figures you gave. I would love to get those comments so I can read them at our board meeting. Also, I know we didn't get to see your presentation. If there's any way maybe we could get it out to the board members, I would really like to see the whole presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And with that, I don't see any other members' hands up, but I want to check in with our IT folks to see if the video is working for us. Is there any way that maybe we could have that file sent to you during this meeting? And I think everybody was eager to watch the video. Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Chair, we can send the video to all the members. And the tribal members as well. Paula can send it.
The problem
Once we
is
make
that
sure we
it
have
sounds like the file is corrupt, so
once we have an uncorrupted
okay.
file, we check it.
There's no way to get it between now and the end of the meeting? Yeah, I think we all want to see this, right? We all want to watch the video, and we certainly have time. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair.
Thank you, council member. Are you chair or council member here? Chair? Chair. Thank you, Chair Moreno. On our next agenda item, we're going to be discussing Native American cultural monitoring. Item 5, and we'd like to invite Ray Teran from Viejas Band of Kumeyaay Indians to present on the Native American cultural monitoring. He'll also be joined by Sarah Allred from Caltrans, as well as Keith Greer from SANDAG. I turn it over to you, gentlemen and ladies. Sir, on the line.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council, the board, and all the persons attending on the online. My name is Ray Teran. My title is Resource Management Director for the Viejas Tribal Government. I am not an enrolled member of the tribe. I am a hired mercenary to do a lot of work for the tribe. I take care of all their government programs. I take care of their environmental programs. I take care of the wellness programs. I'm the liaison for SANDAG, SDG&E, Cox Cable, as well as probably liaison to the county dog catcher. So I do have a lot of responsibilities, but one of my primary responsibilities is I coordinate the cultural monitoring activities for the Viejas tribe. Now, I don't know how many of you know how cultural monitoring works, but whenever an agency wants to do any kind of earth-moving activities or any kind of activities in the county, they have to follow NEPA and CEQA. And one of the requirements of CEQA is that you have a cultural monitoring consultation. That consultation usually involves sending a letter to all the tribes saying, we're getting ready to do something. Please provide us any information you have on any potential Native American artifacts that might be impacted. I read every one of those letters. I answer every one of those letters. And most of the time it's doing a project that really is not going to impact any kind of cultural resources, because most of the areas that are being developed right now are areas that have already been disturbed and no longer have any cultural relevance. I'd like to thank Mike for his history lesson to us. And that's a look, kind of a look backwards. Let me give you a little bit of a look forward. As Mike mentioned, in 1851, Congress established reservations, and all of us were put on reservations. All of us Native Americans were put on reservations, and to some good and to some bad, but primarily mostly bad. We didn't get the finest land around. We didn't get the finest resources around. We didn't have the finest access to resources, not like we used to have. So anyway, the Congress, by act of Congress, we got our reservations. In the 70s and 80s, we had gambling. Gambling was now allowed on reservations to various degrees, everything from bingo halls, and as it progressed on to full-blown casinos. Again, that's a right and privilege that's been granted to us by the state of California. By virtue of act of Congress, our reservations could be gone. As well as they would have been established, they can be removed from us. Now let's talk about gambling. By a referendum or a act of the legislature, gambling can be gone. So our land is gone. Our source of income to many tribes is gone. What is the last thing available to a Native American? Well, the answer is their culture. And that's what cultural monitoring is all about. Everything else that we have can be taken away, but you can't take our culture away. And the only way we can preserve our culture is to go to the sites that are being disturbed and make sure that those sites are not disturbed. Make sure those sites are being archived and being preserved. So it's very important, and I think it's the highest calling of any tribal member to go and ascertain and to preserve their culture for their tribe. This is a culture that's been here for at least 10,000 years. 600, I can't remember the term for it, but it's 600 different families have lived through this area that we can identify. We can identify that. We have tribal members that can look back 10,000 years and point to ancestors. There's not many of us in this room can look back and point to an ancestor that lived here 10,000 years ago, or even an ancestor that they knew 10,000 years ago. So when we get a notice that somebody's going to do some digging out here, we assign one of our cultural monitors to go and do cultural monitoring of that earth-moving activity. And in some cases we find things, in most cases we don't. But just for statistics-wise, about 20 to 25% of the cultural sites in San Diego County have been recognized, have been archived, have been identified. Of that 25%, 85 to 90% were discovered through cultural monitoring. So many times we get contractors coming in and saying, well, identify exactly where you have your cultural resources. We can't do that because there are cultural resources everywhere. And what we do is we err on the side of, we don't know what's there, we're going to go look at it, even to the chagrin of many contractors because they think we're going to stop their project. We are the contractor's best insurance. If we find a cultural resource, we can archive it, we can preserve it. If they go and disturb a cultural site, there is no preservation of that. And what kind of damage has that done to our culture? Well, our cultural monitors, like I said, have the highest and biggest, best calling of any Native American now, which is to preserve their culture. So that's my presentation on cultural monitoring. It was been a pleasure to talk to you and to provide you and to give you a little bit of information about looking forward to preserving our Native American culture. And again, thank you to Mike for giving us a bit of a history lesson today.
Thank you, Ray. Keith?
Would you like to take the Caltrans presentation first or do mine? I can do either. I will do it.
And then Sarah will be next.
Thank you. My name is Keith Greer. I'm the Environmental Compliance Manager here at SANDAG. So my job is making sure that all of SANDAG's efforts are in compliance with federal, state laws. I want to talk just a couple minutes today about what my team works on, how we interact with the tribal nations, and I want to present an opportunity that exists to strengthen that interaction. But stepping back a little bit, SANDAG is kind of unique in all of California. We are a consolidated transportation agency, which in my world, that means we do all the transportation planning. We collect all the federal, state, and local funds. We do the programming of the funding for those transportation infrastructure projects. And we also, unique to SANDAG, we also design and engineer a lot of our heavy and light rail, like the trolley or the heavy rail and coaster tracks. And we do the bike and ped programs. And finally, we construct. And I think a lot last part, the design, engineering, and construction relates to the item today, which is Native American cultural monitoring. So how does my team involve or interact with this? So I think most of you have heard about the California Environmental Quality Act. That's the state program for environmental protection, or the National Environmental Protection Act, Policy Act, that's the federal program. My team is responsible for all the environmental clearance documents. You probably heard about environmental impact reports. There's many different types of documents, but all those require tribal consultation upfront and early on in the process, and later on, possible mitigation if there's resources available. We're also responsible for obtaining and complying with state and federal permits. Talk about like U.S. Army Corps permits or regional water body control permits. Our group responsible for making sure we can get those permits and that we comply with them once issued. And then finally, one of the fun parts of my job is we have a proactive planning for natural resources. So we have a group working on habitat conservation and making sure that the region's areas are being conserved at the same time that other areas are being developed. So tribal involvement in this. I think the most thing we've been working on is whenever we have these big environmental impact reports, like the ones coming to mind right now is the EIR that we're developing for the 2025 regional plan. We have to reach out to the tribes and we try to do early consultation as part of AB 52 consultation. And that's to say early on, before we have any environmental review, what's important out in the area that we are potentially impacting, and what are the tribes interested in seeing in that environmental document. And that's kind of the long-term look ahead. Going through the process then, as we get our federal and state permits and we go towards construction, there's also a requirement under the State Historic Preservation Act 106 to make sure that we consult with the tribes on making sure that any construction, that's the earth moving opportunities, doesn't affect tribal resources and that there's a monitor on site. So as a rule of thumb, anytime that SANDAG moves any dirt, we actually have a Native American cultural monitor on site. So one thing I want to present is an opportunity. So through all these consultations that I've been involved with for the last 6-7 years, there is always a prevailing common theme in all of them. And I think you're going to hear next from Caltrans about what they've done is to develop an MOA on how they approach this issue. The opportunity I present to this group today is something that SANDAG does not have, but we've talked about it. Is there a way that we can do a government-to-government MOA outlining the roles and responsibilities and commitments, formalize that as part of possibly our 2025 regional plan, and then implement it on a construction project basis? So that's a little bit about what we do, how we interact with tribes, and the opportunity that I'll lay out the table today for discussion. And I think you'll help, after the next presentation, you'll see how Caltrans does it, and that could be a potential model for SANDAG. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith. Sarah, Ms. Allred, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a few brief remarks today. I am Sarah Allred. I am with Caltrans Cultural Studies Office in the Headquarters Division of Environmental Analysis in Sacramento. I work on statewide programs and policies related to the department's consultation and diplomacy with California Native American tribal governments regarding the effects of transportation development on tribal, cultural, and natural resources. And I also administer the Caltrans Cultural Studies Subcommittee, which is a subcommittee to the Director's Native American Advisory Committee. The Cultural Studies Subcommittee meets quarterly with tribes throughout the state on policy issues regarding the integration of tribal, cultural, and traditional knowledge and expertise into Caltrans cultural and environmental studies. And by the way, the Cultural Studies Subcommittee is open to all California Native American tribes. So if your tribe is not currently a member of the subcommittee and wishes to participate, please don't hesitate to reach out to me to be added to the invite list for those quarterly meetings. So one of the key policy issues that Caltrans has been working on with tribal partners is related to tribal cultural monitoring, which we view as an important part of creating capacity for the inclusion of tribal traditional knowledge in Caltrans cultural and environmental studies. And what we've heard from our tribal partners over the last few years is that it has been a lot of variation and some inconsistency among the 12 Caltrans districts in how tribal cultural monitors are compensated for their participation in projects. And so in response to these concerns, Caltrans, with the support of the department's executive leadership, has been working with its legal and procurement specialists on the development of more consistent mechanisms for compensation and rates of compensation for tribal expertise. And these efforts are ongoing, and, seeking to be inclusive of all California Native American tribes. So we're looking at a toolbox of options for, providing reimbursement in a more consistent manner. And as part of these efforts, Caltrans will soon be conducting a statewide survey of tribal governments to more fully understand the tribe's concerns and preferences in terms of cultural monitoring and expertise, to help shape our policies and procedures for providing reimbursement and being inclusive. Meanwhile, one of the attachments for this item on the agenda is Caltrans' fact sheet on tribal consultation and the consideration of tribal traditional knowledge and expertise. This fact sheet provides an overview of Caltrans' current processes and procedures, and it has links to more detailed guidance. We encourage you to take a look at that attachment, and we welcome your feedback and input on the content. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions or comments on that document. But, in the near future, please keep an eye out for that survey. We will, of course, message it broadly, but it will be an important part of getting input from our tribal partners to kind of shape that policy, ensure that tribes are included in cultural studies and duly compensated for their expertise. So thank you again for the opportunity. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to me with any questions.
Appreciate you very much, Sarah. Thank you. And thank you for the presentation and for all the work you continue to do on behalf of California.
Thank you.
Clerk, do we have any public comments on the presentation?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Yes, we do have public commenters on item 5, truth. Please come to the podium and you will be followed by Consuelo.
All right, that dependent sovereignty, it's like taking away gambling. My answer for Native business alternatives was jewelry, similar to culture. I appreciated the FAQ, and it seems like that if the state doesn't have a tribe's info from the California Native American Heritage Commission's tribal contact list, then they can't recognize or reach out. That's a problem. I'm glad there's outreach for the beginning of any Caltrans planning, but how does anybody know if an area is an important tribal heritage resource area when the original planning is being drafted? Maybe there could be some historical map sharing. I don't want to see SANDAG repeat the Del Mar Tunnel fiasco. I'm also curious that if each tribe project and cultural resource investigation is unique, then does Caltrans have a standard operating procedure for working with tribal experts, or do they just hope they'll understand the traditional knowledge? Let's see, Exhibit 3.6, Director's Policy number 19, working with Native American communities. Fun fact, it says Native American communities include Native Americans that are not part of a California tribe living in California, end quote. So there you go. That means I can be included. It's inclusionary. Isn't that wonderful? Thank you.
Our final commenter, Consuelo, please go ahead.
Let's see, culture, can you hear me?
Yes.
Cultural monitoring. That title alone is cringeworthy. Let's see, liaison to the SDG&E. Wow. The First Nations people lived for thousands of years without electricity, but yeah, say no more, Ray. Tehran, do you even realize that Sempra Energy is in bed with the World Economic Forum? I was already disturbed about this meeting, but just knowing that you're a liaison for SDG&E is the cherry on top for real. You said that natives were treated primarily mostly bad, yet you still mix with this state's government. Sure, they'll archive all you want. They can and will take our culture entirely away. They already have. You're just too well paid and indoctrinated to recognize it. All of you, wake up. UN Agenda 21. Get with the program.
That concludes the public comments on this item.
How about any border committee or tribal leader comments? Please raise your hand. Ray?
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment on Sarah's comments there. We are working very closely with the state of California in their process of getting our cultural monitors paid when they're out there preserving the cultural artifacts. And it's very interesting. The state of California, I can go up to Sacramento and punch one of those people in the nose if they're not doing right to us. It is interesting that the federal government does not pay any cultural monitors when there's a federal project. So we are trying to work with the federal government to be able to get our monitors paid for projects that are being done. Just for an example, the border wall that was built went through a tremendous amount of cultural resource areas, and they never paid a cultural monitor 1 penny to go monitor that. We had to cover the cost of having a cultural monitor there. So while the state, we're working well with the state, and we really appreciate the effort to get our cultural monitors paid. We don't have such a good rapport with the federal government when it comes to federal projects. So I just wanted to add that.
Great. Thank you, Ray. Any other border committee comments or tribal comments? Anybody on the line? Chairman Osuna? Okay. Hearing none, thank you so much for the presentation. I will add that our cultural resources, our remains, as was touched upon earlier, getting them back from the UC system is very important to all the tribes. We're not saying, like you mentioned, Ray, to stop building, to stop progress. We know it's going to happen. We're just asking to be done respectfully, and if our resources are uncovered, not only give them back to us, mitigate, find a way around it. That's all we're asking. You know, things are not perfect between entities. Things are not perfect, you know, but they're getting there. They're getting it better. There's more consultation. There's more reaching out. I would advise public to read this book called American Genocide by Benjamin Madley. If you want to know the history of California, you'll see that it was an atrocious history, but here we are today. There's a Truth and Healing Council. There was the apology by the governor. There's little movements forward, and that's what we want to do. Even though today we are still feeling the effects of what happened. For me, I'm an elected leader of my tribe. My focus is healing. My focus is, you know, working together with the state, with the feds, with SANDAG, and I will keep on trying to do that so my people can improve their lives, all American Indian people. Thank you guys for the presentation.
Before we move on to item number 6, I heard that the video is working, so I'm going to take co-chair privilege and have us watch the video.
Hello, I'm Saquon Chairman Cody Martinez, and on behalf of Saquon's Tribal Council, I would like to share some important and interesting insights with you regarding Native American sovereignty. It's the responsibility of all tribes to continue to educate everyone on sovereignty, and not just the public at large, but also our tribal youth, so it's ingrained in their core understanding of who they are and what they will be protecting when it's their time to lead. Tribal governments provide essential government services such as water, healthcare, housing, educational, and many other opportunities for our people that were non-existent up until our ability to fund these programs ourselves.
Sovereignty is the inherent power of a nation to govern itself, and Indian tribes existed as sovereign governments in a free and independent existence for thousands of years before Europeans stepped foot on this continent.
Sovereignty as understood by the United States in relationship to the tribes, is predicated to a great degree on this document called the Doctrine of Discovery. It's a legal fiction. In other words, it's made up. But people decided to accept it as a truism, even though, again, I like to stress the fact it is made up. But the Doctrine of Discovery simply said that Europeans had a superior title to the New World based on discovery, and that the right of the natives to their own lands in the New World was simple occupancy. They could say that. For 100 years, the Indians didn't even know that they were saying that because the tribes were powerful. They were able to resist and fight back against the Europeans. But time progresses, we have disease, we have warfare, and the tribes are now in a position where they need to negotiate with the United States. And the United States accepts England's Doctrine of Discovery rights. And the tribes were still powerful enough that the United States, even though they believed they had title to the land, continued to negotiate with the tribes. Cultures evolve, governments evolve, but sovereignty as practiced historically and in the United States is the right to govern yourself. And this is what the relationship with the tribes in the United States has taught them, that you don't stop governing. No matter how much they may want to limit your governance, you never stop governing because you're unique politically, socially, culturally, and you're proud of that uniqueness and differentness.
Sovereignty is a word that you can look up in the dictionary, but I believe true sovereignty is exercising your right as a tribal government, implement laws, govern your lands, public safety, education, and so on.
We control our destiny through sovereignty. That's why sovereignty is paramount as far as protecting it. Sovereignty is our existence. Without sovereignty, our culture, our religion, and tradition is under attack. So the tribes must maintain culture, tradition, religion, and sovereignty to be an existing survivable band or tribe.
During the American period, Americans came here to settle California, and when they saw Indians as an Indian problem and they wanted to remove us. They wanted to put us off on reserves, which the Americans called reservations, which would segregate us from the rest of the population. So they came up with the Treaty of Santa Isabel of 1852, which they got a small group of Indians, and they signed the Treaty of Santa Isabel, and it got sent off to Washington, put in a drawer somewhere and locked up and never got ratified. After the Treaty of Santa Isabel 1852 didn't get ratified, the United States government tried using termination and assimilation to try to deal with the Indian problem. This didn't seem to work because Indian people retain their culture, retain their language, and retain their ties to the land. And we've gotten strong, and now instead of dealing with a government to conquered nation relationship, we're dealing with the government as a government to government relationship. And now we're allowed to govern ourselves, but it doesn't seem that we're allowed to police ourselves.
You look at history and you see the literally hundreds of treaties. You look at the thousands of pages of congressional acts. You look at the Supreme Court, no longer just interpreting the validity of the Constitution, but interpreting the political environment and how they want the Constitution to be read, clearly points out that other than snippets of time where people of moral integrity stand up, the push is to take away from the tribes. Push, push, push. So we can never let our guard down. If we do, we may turn around and discover we've lost more of our right to govern ourselves.
Constantly, since termination and Public Law 280 were activated in the 1953, there's been a misconception that the state of California, in a lot of cases, various counties within the state of California have jurisdiction over tribes, which is not true. It takes us to continually educate the outside governments as to our authority. We are not political subdivisions of the state. I think every tribal council member needs to understand that and continually repeat that fact. We are independent governments located within this state.
Without sovereignty, tribes would not be self-reliant, we would not be able to care for our people, or have the tremendous economic and community impact throughout San Diego and the state of California without the revenues. As we see on a daily basis, the positive impacts of sovereignty are numerous and far-reaching.
We hope that what we're doing in San Diego serves as an example for what can be done. There's respect and follow-through. Tribes as sovereign nations should be at the table when region's future is being discussed. It is our future too.
Without our sovereign authority and jurisdiction within our own reservations, our culture, our tradition, and our religion could die.
Sovereignty means to me that we can practice our culture and our religion and our language as we see fit, and no other government can take that away from us.
Tribal sovereignty is a right and a legacy that is central to our relationship with the United States and other jurisdictions. We, as Indian nations, want to ensure that our relationship with other jurisdictions doesn't impact or diminish this relationship. When tribes and other jurisdictions work together in a climate of mutual respect, we can accomplish great things for all our people. We have seen in recent years great progress in working collaboratively on issues at the federal, state, and local level. Tribes have worked assiduously with neighboring jurisdictions on issues related to the San Luis Rey Basin. Tribal fire departments have developed a broad range of mutual aid and assistance pacts. Tribes have worked cooperatively with county departments to address concerns regarding hazardous materials, disease, and environmental quality. The broadest local interactions have been through the development of regional transportation planning. As we move toward the future, climate change, energy, water, and habitat preservation are just a few of the many areas where we can establish sovereign relationships that can create synergies of purpose. Economic development on the reservations has been and can be a major addition to the economies of tribes and our neighbors. We understand those times when actions have negative impacts both to and from the tribes, but just as important, we should acknowledge the positive impacts of tribes to the region. Sovereignty is life for us as a people. With mutual respect, as well as the development of mutual trust and understanding, we can build a bright future for all our people.
Wow, I am very happy we were eager to watch the video. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item number 6, which is the preliminary employment center data on tribal nations in San Diego County. My understanding is that Naomi Young will present preliminary insight on SANDAG's employment center within tribal nations in San Diego County. Ms. Young, if you could let us know how many minutes you need for the presentation.
Good afternoon. I should require less than 10, but I've been told to speak really quickly.
Wonderful.
So I will aspire to that. So good afternoon. My name is Naomi Young. I'm principal economist here at SANDAG, and I'd like to share with you some really early insights emerging from 2 of our efforts. The first is the Series 15 forecast. The second is our revised employment centers. Oh, I'm sorry. Of course, there we go. Over the last few months, we've been sharing our updated regional forecast that sets out how we see population, jobs, and housing changing over the next 30 years. As many of you have seen this chart, which shows and heard the way that we're seeing new trends projected for population and growth in the region. And you've also heard that our takeaways are that population growth is slowing significantly over the next 20 years, after which it begins to decrease, and that this means people in our region will be older. We'll need more and different housing to accommodate an aging population. And importantly, an aging population means employment opportunity becomes even more important. As people live longer and we have fewer children, our ability to save for retirement and pay into Social Security takes on more significance for the economic stability and financial health of people in our region. So what I'm going to focus on is really where are these employment centers and how do we connect reservations with these employment centers, and what are the resources that we need there? The Series 15 economic forecast reflects the region's economy continuing to expand, and it incorporates expectations that people work later in life, and at the same time, jobs are evolving, supporting the gig economy, remote work, and emerging technologies. So what this means is when we think about training for our communities and the people, where do we focus those efforts, and how does it adapt as the services in our communities change? To show what this means at a more local level, SANDAG's created the employment centers, and we're currently updating to 2.0, so I'm coming really to you a month too early to be able to show you the detailed results of the findings, but I'm going to talk to you at least some high-level insights that are emerging. In version 1.0 of SANDAG created 4 categories of employment centers. The 4 tiers represent different levels of employment concentration. Tier 1s are our biggest, Tier 4 are our smallest in terms of concentration or employment density. And notably, the employment center analysis also helped us understand that around 75% of the jobs in the regions are located in these centers. So if you look at this map, you'll see that the employment centers are really this kind of blue teal colors. They're located to the western half of the county. And then what you can also see is where the reservations are located. And the thing that's notable about this is that we would think that the composition of businesses and employment opportunities in each of these tiers would look the same, but they don't. So when we start thinking about where our employment centers are located with respect to reservations, what we want to think about is there a good match between employment growth and opportunity, the skills for the people living on reservations, and the opportunities that are in Tier 2 centers, which are the ones closest to the reservations. Our current employment center analysis is being updated, so reflect our Series 15 forecast for employment, but notably we're also adding employment centers, 2 new categories of employment centers. One is the tribal gaming centers, the other is military. From the preliminary analysis of our employment centers, we're going to have 5 casino resorts that show up as anchors for these employment centers. They're Barona, Haraz, Pala, Saquon, and Viejas. Now, I know that a lot of the discussion today has been about economic development beyond casinos and tribal resorts, but one of the things I want to do is also emphasize that there's some really good insights that are emerging from even having an employment center focus on on casinos. So the employment center analysis highlights, as I mentioned, the interdependency between communities in Tier 2 employment centers and the tribal gaming centers, and that this is a 2-way flow between tribal employment centers and the Tier 2. So in other words, tribal and some employment centers are job importers. They rely on drawing people from outside the reservation to fill this positions. So this really stresses the importance of access and transportation. The other aspect is that the industries where people living on reservations tend to align best with industries present in the Tier 2. So this is what I mean by this 2-way flow of people and jobs and skills between the two. So you can't develop one without thinking about what's the draw and the opportunity in another. I know for many of you this isn't surprising, but the Tier 2 centers that really highlight or come out are San Marcos, Escondido, and El Cajon, and that also includes their Tier 3 centers that are right around them. These are significant portions of our employment in the region. With the projected change in the region's demographics, our Series 15 forecast captures that some industries are growing more strongly. The blue sectors highlight where we're seeing the most jobs expected to be added over time. And what I really want to emphasize is that these sectors track with the ability of people to work later in life and the services that aging populations need. Healthcare expands in response to the needs of the elderly population. Tourism remains strong, reflecting the spending patterns of seniors, both nationally and internationally. But what this also means is that we think about those changing populations. How do we innovate on the services in these sectors to tailor to the aging population or the clientele that would go to that? This slide recasts the last one, so it's easier to see where the job growth is expected to occur by industry. But through a more local lens, what I'm highlighting here are the green sectors are the sectors that are most present in Tier 2 employment centers. So these are where the jobs or growth expected for the non-reservation lands closest to them. if you let me just back up. And so you can see that the healthcare industry, tourism, manufacturing, government, education, these are all sectors that have strong employment, relatively strong employment growth that are close to the reservations or people living on the reservations. You can also see that these are industries where the skills, for many of them, the jobs provide living wages, and that there's long-term career paths in them. The blue boxes indicate the sectors that are the primary job of people living on reservations. So you can see this nice overlap between sectors that are strong and growing in our region that are in the tier 2 and for people living on the reservation. So this is a way of thinking about where do we lean in terms of career pathways, education, entrepreneurism for small businesses. So what I really want to emphasize, and I went a little too fast, is that I've shared with you a relatively high level, and in the coming months, we'll have far more detail to talk about what the regional forecast means and how it translates to tribal lands and local jurisdictions. But I'm hoping that this presentation helps prime the pump with thinking about what the forecast points to when we think of slower population growth, more elderly, fewer younger people, and the fact that we'll continue to have strong employment opportunities. You know, with all of these together, it really means that we have to rethink strategies for economic development. As SANDAG begins to share the sub-regional results and roll out our Employment Centers 2.0, what I'm really hoping this product can do is help identify funding opportunities for current and changing future needs, prioritize transportation corridors to improve access to places where employment is forecasted to grow, align development of training and education programs with jobs of the future, and lastly, to help guide investments to ensure services evolve with the changing age composition of people living on tribal lands. Thank you. And I apologize for running through that so fast, but trying to be respectful of your hard stop.
No, thank you, Ms. Young. Let's hear first if we have any public comment.
Thank you, Chair. We do have 2 public commenters. Truth, you'll be followed by the final commenter, Consuelo. Please come to the podium.
No information means I got to write while listening. So let's see, the military and government are separate categories, but you know, technically they're the same entity. So that would be 15%. And I'd like to know, what is innovation? Is that biotech, which includes unnatural, non-native theories about what works? Let's see, and there's going to be less people by 2060. What a future. SANDAG's future forecast of the younger generations working longer with less pay and less children. And so what would be the future of tribes and of cultures if this current perverted American trajectory is followed? I would hope that it would not be. I would hope we all change for the better, because that's not going to be good for the future. And employment density, you got 5 casino resorts. And I wonder, isn't that a bit contradictory to the regional plan's anti-car agenda? Access by public transit is limited, if not impossible. So that would mean the highways need to be well maintained. That would definitely include tangible safety improvements for the 67, for example. And so, yeah, I'm going to say we need to work on the future. Thank you.
Our final commenter, Consuelo, please go ahead.
Things are not getting better, and they're far from perfect. Apology by a governor is not progress. What a joke. Erica, reminder, we're all one people. There's not just your people. You should all be working for the betterment of humanity, not just one box demographic. It takes more than just wearing native jewelry to consciously evolve and recognize who you all are really working for. Whether you know it or not, you are assisting in the demise of our species. Reminder for those saying you want to spread love in this time, research is love, speaking the truth is love, standing up for your right is love, having the hard conversation is love, and shining your light on all the darkness is love. To the pure hearts, we are here to heal, not harm. We are here to love, not hate. We are here to create, not destroy. Ase, aho.
And that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. And now let's hear from our border committee or tribal and symposium members. Does anybody have any comments on this item? Okay, so we are going to move on to item number 7.
Item number 7 is our final funding opportunities for tribes presented in collaboration by SANDAG, the County of San Diego, and Caltrans, which will be followed by a discussion. Antoinette Meyer from SANDAG.
All right, I'm going to sit up here and do
Yes,
my portion
ma'am.
of the presentation and then pass it over to my colleagues from the county and Caltrans. I will ask production, though, to advance the slide for me since I don't have a clicker up here. Thank you. Okay, so good afternoon, Antoinette Meyer. I am the Senior Director of Planning here at SANDAG, and we wanted to have a discussion about funding today because I think with the passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, we are seeing an unprecedented amount of new grant opportunities, and many of those have tribal set aside. The new NOFOs are coming out weekly. Even as a large organization, we're having a really difficult time keeping up with all of the grant applications. But we really want the region to be successful, everyone in the region to be successful and to be able to take advantage of this funding and to compete well. So today we wanted to hear from you about what your funding priorities are, how we can better assist and support you with the pursuit of grant funding. Before the discussion, if we could go to the next slide, I want to talk about some of the successful collaborations and partnerships that we currently have with the SCTCA or individual tribes. And then I'll hand it over to Caltrans and the county to talk about funding from their own respective agencies. But on this slide, you'll see I've highlighted a few programs that we've partnered on, starting with the regional early action planning grants. This is state funding that funnels through SANDAG, regional agencies, to support housing development, housing acceleration, and we are passing 2 million of those funds through to the SCTCA to help advance the housing needs of the tribes. And these funds will be available early next year in 2024. We also applied jointly with the SCTCA for a local agency technical assistant grant, and this is to improve internet connectivity for the tribal digital village. This is a tribal-led internet service that serves 105 buildings, 500 households, and this will help to improve that service. We've partnered with the La Jolla Band of Luiseño Indians on their Safe Streets and Roads for All comprehensive strategy or safety action plan rather, and that's being developed in tandem with the regional Vision Zero action plan. And so it's important that we're really collaborating with all of the tribes on this though, because any project that is in the regional Vision Zero action plan will be eligible for future Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation grants. So we want to make sure that we're working through the Tribal Transportation Working Group to ensure that all of your priorities for safety are included in that. And then finally, our climate team recently received $1 million from the EPA through the Climate Pollution Reduction Program to produce a regional climate action plan. We know some of the tribes also applied for this funding. So we'll want to collaborate and really align these plans. Again, like the Vision Zero program, all projects that are in the regional cap then will be eligible to apply for $4 billion in competitive grant funds that'll be coming from the EPA starting next spring. So again, we'll be working with the Tribal Transportation Group to make sure that we're capturing all of your climate priorities and that regional cap as well, so that everybody will be eligible to apply for that funding. I wanted to mention that we have created a shared spreadsheet where we're tracking all of the grant programs that have tribal set-asides. I hope all of you have access to that. And we want to understand if that's a helpful resource, if there's a better way to communicate about those grant opportunities with you. But before we have that discussion, I'll turn it over to Robin from the Caltrans Office of Local Assistance to talk about some of the funding programs that the state has. Or is Brian presenting? I'm sorry.
Hi, good afternoon. We're going to tag team Rob and I.
Okay.
So I'd just like to thank the board members and tribal leaders for the privilege to talk with you this morning. This afternoon. Is our slideshow loaded?
Push the green button. There you go.
Super, thank you. So Caltrans Local Assistance, we do have a mission statement. Our purpose is to help our local partners deliver their transportation projects that enrich the communities. So what does local assistance do? Why do we exist? We're here to help get the funds through the complicated regulatory process. So your funds could be either federally funded through FHWA or from the state, from state of California. And depending on the fund type you get, there's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of regulations. It's a regulatory maze. So our purpose and our function is to help you navigate that so you can get the money so you can do your projects. How do I go? Oh, did we not have that slide? Okay. Unfortunately, there was a slide I wanted to have next that was going to show us an example of some programs that we have, such as alternative transportation program, the highway safety improvement program, things of that nature that show different funding sources from that are state and federal grant opportunities for the tribes. Some of these do have tribal set aside, so that means there is a portion of those money that is set aside specifically for the tribes to come and get. At that time, doing that we're short on time, I'd like to turn it over to Rob Owen.
Oh, there's the, it was somehow got out of order. Just some of the different types of programs, both recently and kind of future coming up. The couple I'll highlight, again, we have active transportation and highway safety improvement program projects that I think there's 4 different tribal government projects in those categories. You know, there's a lot of things coming out through the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act federally. You know, for the one that's up there, legislative discretionary earmarks, contact your respective state or federal legislators to get those. It's not a regular cycle of things that go directly to those legislators. And under the RAISE program, there's supposed to be some tribal set aside funds as well. I'll just, you know, we've got a couple of projects that are going on currently, but I'll pass on these for now. I do want to highlight our local assistance blog. It has a whole tab there on tribal resources. And there's a list of some other links. So the local assistance blog, you can subscribe to the transportation.gov grants dashboard. I think Antoinette mentioned that too. You know, the where you can search for a whole bunch of different grants that are coming up. The main thing that we wanted to come up with, I emailed many of you, and I don't know if I have everybody's contact information, but we do want to be able to communicate on a regular basis with all of you. So we'll kind of work on building a email contact list for different opportunities that come up, both for training and for different funding programs. And I think what we'd like to leave you with, both Brian and I really want to be able to talk with you and kind of help match funding priorities or funding needs with different programs and opportunities that come up, so we can just be having that constant dialogue. So when there is something that comes up, we can try to help match that, well in advance of a call for projects and have that consultation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Steve Lockett. I'm Deputy Director for Economic Development for the County of San Diego. Our office, while relatively new, having just opened about 1.5 years ago, is dedicated to promoting the economic prosperity of all San Diegans across the entire county. One of the things we are here today is just to mention that we have an external grants unit in our office that really looks to find grant opportunities that would benefit not only the County of San Diego, but all of our partners as well. We want to offer that opportunity up to you all, depending on what you are looking for in terms of either economic development, grant opportunities, or other. If there are certain priorities that you are looking for, we want to be a partner and a value add for all of you. So I just am here to offer our services as grant finders, grant assistance in grant preparation, but also if you feel like you don't have the capacity to go for a particular grant, perhaps our office can be of assistance. Caitlin?
Thank you. And just to complement what Steve shared, in the Office of Sustainability and Environmental Justice, we're also very new, about 1.5 years in, but we have the county's tribal liaison, Roberta Leash, who is a great partner, and I am the grants and contracts manager for the team. So as you're pursuing funding that will support climate resilience, climate adaptation, environmental justice, please consider us as a partner. We would love to learn how we might be a resource and how we can assist you in those efforts as well.
Okay, so I know we want to have a discussion, but I'll turn it back to the chair for public comment first, and then we'll open it up to hear from the tribes and any feedback they want to provide on how we can partner and bring more money to the tribes.
Sure. Are there any public comments, Clerk?
Thank you. I have one public commenter on this item. Truth, please come to the podium. And I just had another hand raised virtually.
I love that slide that says, why do we exist? I ask that of SANDAG all the time. That graphic is very accurate, tons of red tape. The most important discussion question is the second one. Are there any current projects that tribes are looking for grant assistance on? Because tribes being in charge of what projects are getting priority rather than the money being the director is what ensures sovereignty. Everyone should be asking themselves, why would the federal government be giving away so many millions to tribes for these projects? Since when have they ever had Native people's best interest in mind? Whether it's the broken treaties, boarding schools, uranium mining, or this new green energy scheme, why trust now? Because that Vision Zero plan's already been implemented in San Francisco, reducing speed limits everywhere down to as low as 15 miles per hour, and yet there's been no recorded decrease in fatalities. And those solar panels that they're promoting, they cannot be recycled. So we got a whole bunch of them lined up with all the other lithium-based infrastructure, including the wind turbines. So I urge all tribes to continue to do everything to ensure sovereignty and independence and reject anything that does not align with your values and objectives.
Thank you. Our final commenter, Consuelo, please go ahead.
Sorry, Paul Bold, I'm Consuela's husband. Let's see, I wanted to warn the Native Americans here and actually everyone that the government, be careful when you read the contracts with the government, like all these federal grants and stuff, they all have hooks. For instance, I just looked at a SANDAG plan to, they want to create all sorts of attractive housing on their land. But part of that is you aren't allowed to sell it at the land at the market value, which doesn't sound very attractive to me. So beware. Thanks.
And that concludes the public comments.
Okay, thank you. With that, we can go back to the discussion on the questions of and open the floor for discussion on our tribal symposium and border committee members. So let us know if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and the clerk will call upon you. I do want to acknowledge the county for being here. Thank you, Roberta Lee. She is actually a member of the Kauai Band of Indians, and I've seen very positive movement in the last 6 months that you've been there. So thank you. Any member comments? Anybody on the line?
No, there are no hands raised.
Okay, well, there's a lot of funding available, it sounds like. Just got to go get it. Do you provide technical assistance? Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of our meeting then, so thank you. I just want to say that we appreciate the Borders Committee for co-hosting this meeting and hope to continue these gatherings regularly and further our collaboration throughout the year through the Tribal Transportation Working Group and Tribal Task Force meetings, in addition to other special events like this one. I would like to open it up to at this time for tribal leaders to have closing comments. Tribal leaders.
Thank you so much for everybody being here. We love having a voice and being heard. Thank you.
Michael, you have any comments? Mr. Musquish?
I've been participating with the with SANDAG for what, 20 years maybe. It's and sometimes and also working as liaison to tribal leaders, and it oftentimes I hear from tribal leaders about I guess the nice way to say it would be how glacial progress seems to be, and especially in some of the transportation issues that we have within the communities. But there has been a significant change over the last 20 years. And, if you went back then and, jumped to today, you'd really be surprised at how much progress has been made. And a lot of it is from keeping the door open to having that dialogue and talking and just making people aware of, that there are these communities out there, and we share a lot of the same goals for our people, whether it's on reservations or off reservations. We have a lot of the same, your issues spill over into our communities. The issues like substance abuse are just prevalent, and it's just so tragic. We can't address the issues of missing and murdered Indian women without cooperation and work with the adjacent communities, and so that's very important to us, and we need to have that cooperation with your communities. And I, Borders has always been a really interesting committee, very different than the other ones, and it's nice to hear and see people from the adjacent counties and also from Mexico. And I really appreciate the legislator from Baja who was on here. We have there was a significant archaeological site that was found in Ensenada just a couple years ago, and there were many human remains that came from there. And Mexico's policy is that human remains belong to the people of Mexico. And it's been a point of contention for the Kumeyaay in Mexico to repatriate those remains, and the legislator that was speaking mentioned changes in the law, and I know that they've been looking at trying to find ways to give more empowerment to the Kumeyaay in Mexico to change that policy that's been so long standing over there, and to give more rights to the indigenous people in the communities there. So I think that was really great, and I appreciate having that opportunity to hear from the people in Baja.
Thank you, Mike. Any other tribal reps in the room? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Gregor.
Thank you, Chairwoman Pinto. I just want to sort of go off a little bit about what Mike said and also your words, and to all the leaders, the tribal leaders that stand up for the people and take that position to be the voice and the spokesperson. We never really had the formal elections, but we always had leaders that we had faith in, that were generous, that were kind, that were good for the people. And we still have those folks today. And their representation on these committees, locally, statewide, and nationally, is the exercising of our sovereignty, is showing that we are still practicing our traditional ways of governance, but in these new mediums, with newer problems, right, with increased problems, and with increased resources that they have to be incredibly knowledgeable about. And I'm always grateful for that representation, their voices, their leadership. I am an educator by trade. I teach at Cal State Pavungna, also known as Cal State Long Beach, and I'm on sabbatical, which is why I'm helping SCTCA do some policy work. But without knowing where you come from and what that history is really like, then we won't really know how to move forward and how to move forward together. And I see the work done by SANDAG and our tribal nations and our brothers and sisters across the border as being progressive, as being visionary, as showing that folks in our region do want to promote a brighter future for everybody, not just for a selective few. And I'm very proud of our tribal nations and the growth and the leadership that they've shown to become a force, an economic force in the region, to provide livable wages for people that are in the backcountry where the reservations were located, thinking that, as Florence Shipek said, right, we were pushed into the rocks and we were just gonna sort of vanish. But that's not our story. Our story is one of continuance and perseverance. And I think the work being done here is going to continue to I think, innovate and show that we really are a model to other regions that are experiencing similar problems with growth, problem with employment, problem with healthcare, and our environment. I know that this is a model example that other tribes look to and want to replicate in their own communities. So I just want to say, ayayahan.
Thank you so much for those comments. Any other tribal person around the table want to say anything? Thank you, Ms. Leash.
Thank you, Chairwoman Pinto. I just want to introduce myself as the tribal liaison for the County of San Diego, Roberta Leash, and I'm honored to be here with you all and grateful for some of my colleagues to come today because I think there is a shift in the County of San Diego and the culture that we're trying to create. And these two individuals are just proof of that, and that we're trying to do pilot programming and different way to approach grant support and partnerships. But again, I'm from the Kauai Band of Indians and just very fortunate to be with the county for the last 7 months as the first official tribal liaison to work across all of our departments in the county with all of our tribal nations, CBOs, and partnerships. From the Kauai Band. So my maternal side, I am an enrolled member of the Kauai Band of Indians in Riverside County, born and raised there. But I also have paternal lineage to the Luiseño through my grandfather's side from Pechanga and La Jolla. So very closely connected to the tribes down here, but I'm still learning a lot about Kumeyaay and Tequeño and all of the different cultural groups here. And I'm just really appreciative to be a part of all of that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody, for participating. I've been on the Transportation Committee since 2016, and I have seen the evolution. I have seen the tribes come together with SANDAG and entities that, yeah, maybe we haven't always had the best relationship, even with the county, like you just mentioned, Ms. Leash. We haven't had the best relationship. They had a practice of opposing all lands into trust. That's gone. That is gone. So we look forward to our future of working together with the county, working together with SANDAG, working together with the feds. And we've had to evolve. I've grown up on my reservation, 6 acres, no electricity in the 80s, no electricity, no water. This isn't the 1800s, this is in the 80s. And we've had to, take it upon ourselves, and we have our people that we have a responsibility to. So as an elected official, we get it too from our tribal people. We got it here at this meeting, but I'm still going to fight the fight. I'm still going to represent my people because I care. I see Chairman Welch does. I see all these chairmen on the line, on the video, on the sovereignty video. Sovereignty is our #1 issue. Healthcare is our issue. MMIP is our issue. And I'm going to continue to fight that fight however I can, but we've evolved, we'll continue to evolve. And if we don't know the past, we will make the same mistakes. So it's good to talk about all of this today. And I'm so appreciative of everybody being here, the public comments, everybody in the audience. And with that, if there are no other public or committee member comments, then we'll go ahead and call it a day. Can I hit this? We're adjourned. Thank you.